Coming up next, the Bookening reads a book that they enjoyed very much, The Magician's Nephew.
Or did we?
Everybody, welcome to the Bookening. Nothing but positivity. This episode, you have the Nathan Alberson guarantee, and you know me, I am Mr. Positive, Mr. Sunshine. They call me Rainbow McGillicuddy.
That's what I always call you.
Rainbow McGillicuddy. Yeah. Call me Rainbow McGillicuddy. It's the most positive thing you can think of. Also, Brandon has dementia.
I do. Who am I again?
No. Brandon,
Who are you guys?
Well, let me tell you. You're Brandon Chasteen, the scholar who's a baller of reading. We got, might as well introduce him, Jacob Menzel, pastor who's a master of reading, right there.
Hey,
Whoa.
What's up?
Wearing the green hoodie. Is that green? Is this a green situation?
Looks like
Yes,
Strider himself.
green.
I was afraid because oftentimes in life I will say, nice green pants. Actually, I've never said that in my life, but that'd be a very weird thing to say to almost anyone.
You get greens and grays.
I will say, oh, that's a cool green, and someone will be like, it's a gray. Or I'll say, that's a nice green, and they'll say, it's a black. I see greens. Like, you remember Haley Joel Osment saw dead people? I see greens.
I see green pants.
Yeah, I've heard you say that sort of thing before. Maybe even do that sort of
You've
thing.
been one of the, it's black or it's gray. So I was a little afraid because this is a very dark kind of, one could be forgiven.
It's a dark olive kind of army green kind of.
But it's green.
Color,
Yeah.
but it is green.
It looks good on Jake, right, Brandon?
It looks wonderful on Jake.
It's a good hoodie.
It's a goody hoodie.
It's a goody hoodie.
Amanda actually calls this my army hoodie. I think because of the combination of color and texture.
The combination of color and texture, and because she fires a gun over your head as you crawl through the yard while wearing that hoodie. True or false?
True, all the time, yeah.
There you go.
I mean, she fires a gun over my head regardless of whether or not I'm crawling. I crawl for safety.
Well, you gotta keep husbands in line somehow. That's really the lesson of The Magician's Nephew. See, I'm getting us on track here. All right, guys, let's talk about C.S. Lewis's Magician's Nephew.
Let's do it.
Actually, let me tell you our predictions. Nathan said it would be his favorite. He said it was his favorite and that it would continue to be his favorite. Nathan did not just say it would be a favorite. He said it would be the best book of the bunch. Brandon said it used to be his second favorite and will continue to be.
Guess what my first favorite was?
Last battle.
The Horse and His Boy.
Yeah, that's true. Will continue to be the second favorite. Jake said it was never a favorite. He wasn't taken by the slapstick or the creation story.
What slapstick?
All the stuff with Uncle Andrew, presumably.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what'd you guys think?
I had a lot more fun reading this go around than I feel like the last couple of books that we've done. So to me, it feels like a bright spot. I don't know how it actually measures up to the rest of the books. It's been some time. But what I definitely found is by comparison to The Horse and His Boy, I was drawn in and carried along and moved forward. I ran out of time. And so I had to rush through the end of it. So that too, I don't know. I think the first act, maybe the first two acts are what are really weighing in my mind when I say that. But
If I may, those are the two acts that I really like personally. So
Which two?
The first two.
And I had forgotten a lot of little things that I thought were cool, like the whole idea of the, this connected row of flats that you could like sneak in behind and
Oh man, wouldn't you kill for that when you were a kid?
Yeah, that was so cool.
That would be really, that in and of itself is pretty magical.
Having
conceit.
your little treasure trove. I had my own little treasure trove in my room. That was this little secret hidden thing that I found about it from my house from 5th grade through high school. And I don't know, I definitely was thinking about that when I was reading the book. So I was making that connection now. I probably made that connection at some other point too, but it wasn't anything I could get into.
Right.
It was just, there was an air return that had a little tiny, almost like a shelf inside of it. It was weird.
Mm-hmm.
It was like somebody had built it in there on purpose for storing things before. And so I don't know how I figured this out, but I figured it out that there's this little shelf in this air return in the floor, and I could tuck and stack things away, and you could not see it. It was in a corner, and it was on the inside, so there was no way of looking at it that you would ever be able to tell that anything was in it. You would have to literally lift up the grate, stick your hand into the return and under the floor, and then you could find it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I kept all of my contraband, music, the rap and stuff that I wasn't allowed to listen to and things like that. Right. The other thing that I remembered as I was reading this was back when I was super little, I think before my parents were divorced. I was like 4 or 5 years old. My parents were house hunting, and one of the houses we visited had these 2 bedrooms, and I crawled back in through the closet in the room that would have been my room. And there was this little tiny open cutout area back in the back of the closet that connected to the closet on the other side that I found. And I could fit through it. And it was going to connect to what would have been my little brother's room. And that was so cool and fun. I wanted that house so bad just for that. I imagined and dreamed all the fun, cool things I could do. Everything from, sneaking into my brother's room to play, or to play pranks on him, or to whatever I wanted to do. Or just the fact that we could play in the closet, because it wasn't a walk-in closet, but it was I don't know how big the closet actually was. I was little, but it felt like a huge closet. And it was suddenly going to be like this tunnel system, underneath the clothes and everything that you could. And it made such an impression on me that it stuck around. I never forgot it. And that's why I said, I was like 4 or 5 years old when that happened.
Like 15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a young kid.
Yeah. Jake is 19. People should know that.
Pretty precocious.
He's very precocious. Me and Brandon are always like, shut up. I remember as a kid loving secret little hidden things like that, and nothing ever lived up to my imagination, because I read a bunch of books like this, and I was always intrigued by the idea of, like a hidden attic with secrets in it, or discovering treasure in some compartment in my house, or, busting through a wall and finding a body buried in the wall, or, all kinds of cool stuff like happens in stories. But I remember a series of childhood disappointments where I would, we moved into a house that had a crawl space, and I was excited the crawl space was going to be my little kingdom where I could hide out and have contraband and all this stuff. And then it was just like this musty, worm-ridden crawl space, and it wasn't cool at all, Brandon.
Was it not?
It didn't live up to books.
My brother has this house, this old house, and it's got one of those little basements that's more like a cellar. It's hard to describe. It feels very wild.
Right.
It's got like crawl space area, but it's exposed in the basement, and there's dirt, and there's these brick walls and stuff. And it's like out of a horror movie kind of. Like in the movie, or out of
the kid would be, go take the trash down there, Junior, and then he has to go.
Like Home Alone.
It's scary. Yeah,
it's
that
scary.
kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My grandfather.
You'd never take the trash down there, but you'd go down there to check on something.
Right. You'll go check on the burner, whatever one does.
Yeah. Whatever one does in a cellar.
Right.
Hide a body.
Hide a body. Yeah.
It's the place that you would hide a body. Yeah.
Yeah. My grandfather, he had I don't even know what it was. It was like, so you would open up these 2 doors in his study. There was a bookcase in front of it. It was built into the wall. And then behind the bookcase, there was like these shelves for blankets, but it went all the way up to the ceiling of the room behind this secret compartment.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like this huge shaft with shelves all the way up it. And it was a weird place as a child, because you always imagined if you could climb up the shelves. Because then there were places where the attic would start up above that, like little tunnels. Or it looked like a tunnel. We never were brave enough to climb the shelves, but you always imagined what would happen if you climbed up the shelves and then went into these tunnels. And it was, it's like, and then at my parents' house, they had all these vines and stuff growing behind the house. And so we would cut little tunnels and stuff. And there was this one place where all the vines kind of went up like the canopy of a tent.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of our secret hideouts.
I have a recurring dream that I probably talked about on the Bookening before, of this house. Yeah, I've not had this dream for a really long time, but it's like this, I don't know where we've talked about it. We've talked about it on mic somewhere before, because something else was reminding me of it.
Mm-hmm.
I connected it to the Goonies. I connected it to a couple of other things in my mind. Always, you're in this like haunted house kind of situation, and you go up into this attic and you find this like little secret place, and then suddenly you're in this like other world within the house, but it feels like they're like these slides in this cave system thing. But it's just a dream. It's not real.
It's not real.
I don't know why I said that.
That's too bad. What is it about that stuff? I mean, C.S. Lewis taps into something. Just, I mean, I'm sure that we're not the only kids who are just like, oh, that sounds really cool, that little tunnel system under the, like, apart from anything magical or interesting, just the fact that you could come up in a different house is a really neat conceit as a kid. What do kids tap? What does that tap into exactly?
The same thing that Narnia taps into, this desire to get into places you don't know, this mystery, the magic.
You get into the wardrobe, you get somewhere else.
It's like...
I mean, you see that in Tom Sawyer in the cave.
Yeah, Tom Sawyer is particularly more than Huck Finn is the prototypical, if we just sneak out and we go into a secret place, we'll find high adventure kind of.
Yeah.
But Mark Twain's actually smart enough to give you a little bit of my childhood experience, which is Tom's going to come up with a whole bunch of awesome sounding adventures, and then
it's just boring.
They're just going to be boring
Stupid,
crap.
And everybody's sitting around saying,
I'm a pirate.
I want to go home.
Right. Exactly. And Huck's just like, what on earth? Which is sadly what it's more. You don't usually run into Injun Joe or anything all that interesting as a kid.
So there's a point where he says about Diggory that Diggory has this curiosity where he wants to explore. And that's supposed to be a character trait of Diggory's too, because that's what's going to make him into the great Professor Kirk.
Right. And also get him into trouble in this book.
Yeah, but also I think it's just something that boys do. They love to go into these adventures and explore. And that's what these books tap into. And this one in particular, you have from the very beginning, what Lewis is really good is taking these settings, these little scenes, and turning them into a world for you. And so the tunnel behind the house that connects all these houses, I would have never thought of that before.
Right.
And yet he takes it and he makes it into this wonderful introduction to this story. So.
Well, that's such a good idea that it's almost one of those things where I'm disappointed that the story wasn't about that. I want to hear the story about the exciting tunnel under the houses and what was buried down there and what happened and all the adventures. And I want to have them go up into the house, the empty house, and there's a murderer there or smugglers or some Hardy Boys crap that they have to figure out. Like, this is actually a really fun children's story in and of itself. And this is just the little discarded thing at the beginning that Lewis has so many other good ideas that he wants to get to. He can just afford to throw it away.
That's because that's the shadow of the Platonic ideal of the wood between the worlds.
Brennan, positive energy.
Positive energy.
Positive energy this
Positive
episode.
energy.
People want the positive energy.
Yeah.
He's right, though.
You are right, though. It's actually I'm sure that's what Lewis intended, and it's not.
It is.
There's no question.
There's Platonism all over this story.
That's what he intended.
Yeah.
He thought it was pretty clever to have this idea of the world between worlds, and he needed a way to get the kids up into the attic, and it was this really clever device that he had. And they get into the wood between the worlds by going through the world between the houses.
And he gives them a convenient metaphor to understand what's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is fine.
Which is pretty smart. It's really smart for a kid's book where you're trying to get this concept of a world between other worlds that acts as a gateway to all these other worlds. He sets up the whole concept with a simple metaphor that anybody who presumably would have lived in a row of flats could understand or imagine that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And even as a kid that never lived in a row of flats,
you get it.
It wasn't that hard. You can get it.
Well, and it helps set up his central conceit, which is probably more necessary when he's writing the book than it is. These days, kids grow up with Saturday morning cartoons that have multiverses and sci-fi. Sci-fi is not the province of a couple nerds like it was back in C.S. Lewis's day. Yeah. Now everybody's familiar with the idea of different dimensions and portals through time and space. Like, we all see that stuff parodied and mocked and gurgitated and regurgitated. But I know gurgitated isn't a word, in case anybody was worried.
I was worried.
Were you worried, Brandon? Yeah. But I think C.S. Lewis actually has to do a little...
Somebody's going to write a review. He said gurgitated like it was a real word.
What a fool.
Moron.
I prayerfully ask that you... Well, I ask that you guys all prayerfully consider your vocabulary.
One star.
Or your lack thereof.
Yeah.
So he's actually putting in some legwork that probably isn't necessary for kids that all grew up watching Avengers movies.
No.
But it's nice.
But they weren't... no Avengers movies back then.
No Avengers movies back then.
And so they had to have a way of understanding it. And so it's better than the ant crawling
On the string.
The string, yeah.
The ant crawling on the string. What's that?
Oh, man, that was a Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, that's
buddy.
Wrinkle in Time. Yeah, we just moved the Tesseract together.
Yeah. At least he didn't have to have somebody stop and explain it to us. Instead, what happens is he gives you the metaphor, and then Diggory puts the pieces together once they're in the wood between the world.
Well, that's an interesting thing that we haven't ever said before about C.S. Lewis. He's wonderful with exposition, isn't he? I mean, he's really smooth. It just goes down. It feels nutritious and delicious, and you just never even know that you've gotten exposition.
That's right.
The characters figure out where they're at and what it's like really quickly, and he just lays it in smoothly.
And it's fun noticing that. So I just finished teaching To Kill a Mockingbird to some students.
Mm-hmm.
There's the scene where the sheriff comes and he's the one who convinces Atticus to do something major. I guess no spoilers, but it's the end of the novel.
Right.
And we stopped and the students were a little confused, but we figured out what was going on. And I'm like, isn't that wonderful that instead of just telling you everything, like having the sheriff stop and just give you all this background that he never would have said to Atticus, instead she just forces you to put the pieces together.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's a sign of a good storyteller.
Absolutely.
And Lewis does the same thing. He doesn't just tell you everything. He makes you put the pieces together.
And he lets the kids kind of naturalistically and organically figure it out. He puts us in their heads and lets us figure it out with them.
He gives us space to figure it out ahead of them if we can.
And then finally somebody will say it, but they're kids. And so they have the freedom to say the obvious things.
Right.
Well, they have to.
And it feels like, but it always feels like what somebody would say. It never has that sort of feeling of the character's just going to stop and exposit like Brandon's.
Yeah. Aslan doesn't show up and say, children, you are the wood between the worlds. These pools represent worlds.
That's actually...
other than your own.
That is something, I know we probably offended some people by talking so much about Harry Potter in our last episode. That is something that Lewis probably does a little bit better than Rowling. When she has to explain something, the story can sometimes just grind to a halt while somebody
goes to Dumbledore's office.
Somebody done explained it.
Time to go to Dumbledore's office so he can lie to me and then somehow also explain it to me.
She's also actually pretty good at that too. But you sort of feel the gears turning a little bit with her. Like, oh, here's the exposition scene. They're going to talk about the map or the thing or the component now that we need to understand. Professor so-and-so is going to explain it. C.S. Lewis, you never really think about it. You don't catch it that happening.
Well, I don't know. I want to defend Rowling. What she often actually does is she fits in a little bit of exposition that feels natural in its place, but was serving a different purpose.
Yes, she's good at misdirection. She's good at red
misdirection,
herrings.
yeah. So it's like somebody will be explaining a thing that actually feels pretty natural for them to explain that doesn't seem connected to the main plot necessarily. But there's this like circumstance where it's being explained, and then suddenly, later on you'll realize, oh, that whole explanation was in there, not because we were looking into this scenario, but because it had some key information for us that was going to help put pieces together down the road, which is, I think, a really smart way of storytelling.
Yeah, I think so too. And in both cases, you're interested in the exposition because it's interesting. Like you actually want to hear about these worlds and learn about them. And so if somebody does just stop to explain, you're like, oh, well, I'd like to hear. I would want this explained too. So,
but the other thing is that she has the advantage of having a Harry Potter character who needs everything explained to him.
Well,
actually.
I think that's what feels a little clunky about maybe one of the things about The Horse and His Boy that doesn't work quite as well is that you don't have that character. And I like one of the things that was refreshing about getting back to The Magician's Nephew or getting into The Magician's Nephew is that we suddenly had two characters who were out of their element with us as readers. And so it just felt a little bit more natural to have them be the ones that were...
That's interesting. Yeah, we didn't have an audience or a reader surrogate in The Horse and His Boy.
No, we really didn't. And I think that's one of the, if people like that book, it's fine. But for me, it's one of the weaknesses, at least, whether it's a weakness. Brandon's just going to say it objective
is a weakness. I think that of all the books we've read so far, it used to be, I liked it as a boy, but it didn't do it for me this time. And I think it's because in comparison to the others, I think not having that surrogate is definitely a weakness.
That's one of the big things for me, definitely. Yeah. I don't know. You guys want to say anything more about The Horse and His Boy? It's been a week now since we talked about it.
I stand by what we said.
Part of the problem, The Horse and His Boy, I think, is just the reality that the instant you turn Jesus into a lion, you tame the lion.
Right.
And so the whole thing about Aslan is he's not a tame lion, but actually He is. He's a tame version of Jesus. He's C.S. Lewis's personal version of Jesus that we all know and love, and we know that he's actually safe.
Right.
There actually is no danger. When you start to put your own words into his mouth, your own actions into his actions, you start to try to lift the veil. Like that's the whole problem with making the unseen hand of providence visible in the form of a lion in The Horse and His Boy. And a lot of fiction, it's unseen but felt.
Mm-hmm.
Fact is, we don't know what God's doing. It's not safe. That's where dramatic tension comes from, right? That's the heart of dramatic tension in a plot-based novel is we don't see the unseen hand of providence, but we do feel it and we have hope. What Lewis does is he actually puts it there, removes a whole lot of the dramatic tension because there he is, and we know who that is.
Right. And it's actually not the way that Aslan works in these other stories either.
Right.
Why I'm fine with Aslan in this story, he actually bothers me the least in The Magician's Nephew.
Of any of the books, you'd say?
I think so, is because he's completely isolated. He's just doing his thing. He's creating Narnia. And sure, it's a pretty explicit Jesus reference.
Sure.
But he's not directing anything. He's not trying to give any sort of otherworldly wisdom to anybody. All he's doing is establishing Narnia here.
Yeah, his moments with Diggory are really just like, is that really the whole truth?
Yeah.
All he has to do is sort of be like, is that so? To shame Diggory into, actually there's a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd say there's one choice that Lewis makes, and we can argue about whether it's a good choice, but it is a choice, and it's to have Aslan tear up with Diggory.
About the mom.
That's a point
right.
that Lewis wants to make about God, and I don't know how I feel about it. Maybe it's fine. All right, but we haven't gotten to Aslan yet. We're still with Polly and Diggory. What do you guys think about this Polly and Diggory?
Why don't they get married?
Yeah, that's lame.
Why don't they get married?
I don't know. Probably because he grabbed her hand that one time, and she never got over it. You know,
Twisted
women
her wrist,
are.
yeah.
They didn't like to fight as much.
Yeah.
They apologized for the one fight they had, and they decided they would never fight again, so therefore they decided not to get married.
Yeah.
Polly, can we agree, not one of Lewis's better girls? Pretty boring. This is positive energy, but I'm just saying she's fine. She's workmanlike, but nothing really interesting compared to a Lucy or even a Jill.
I mean, Jill's going to push him off
a cliff.
Off a cliff.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, she's
going to be crying behind the shed.
Jill's realistically and interestingly bratty. Lucy is interestingly and realistically sweet. Polly's just kind of there. She's the girl.
Yeah,
she's there to be a motivate. She's
a plot.
She's a foil,
element.
right? Like she's there to give cause to show Diggory's valor and to give him motivation to do the right thing.
Right.
She's the girl who gives her handkerchief to the knight.
Right.
In a sense.
But there's not those specific details that make her a human. There's one actually that I thought was pretty cute, which is where she goes home after a great adventure and gets sent to bed without supper, and because that's how parents are. I thought that was pretty funny.
But that's more for her parents than her.
Yeah, but at least it makes her less of a symbol, like Jake's saying, less of a plot element, and more of, oh, this is a little girl planted in the reality as we understand.
The way that we know that Diggory is good,
right,
is because he's going to do the thing and go after Polly. The way that Shasta jumped in front of the lion. Diggory's on the edge, and he's going to be tempted by Jadis until Jadis says, leave Polly behind.
Right.
And even though he knows that he can't leave Polly behind because she has her own way out, that's the clarifying moment for him.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
Yeah, that is a great scene. But Polly, a little bit of a zero. Because I think Lewis is great at writing little girls. I like Lucy. I like Jill. I like Arvis even. I mean, she's not a pleasant character.
Susan is an interesting character.
Yeah, Susan is an interesting character.
I think you're right. I think Polly is a flatter character than these other ones.
I'm not really criticizing her. She's fine. I'm just saying, she's Ringo to the others. She's still a Beetle, but she's Ringo,
She's not one of the stronger, more colorful female characters.
And there's just not a lot there for little girls even to be like, oh, that was interesting, or how would I respond to this? She's just kind of, she's just...
I don't know if that makes her less realistic.
No, a lot of little girls are...
Well, a lot of it's just perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're really concerned with Diggory's perspective here. This is Diggory's story.
Which is fine.
Yeah. In a way that, Silverchair is Eustace and Jill's story.
Right.
It's their story.
Yep. Agreed.
I'm just thinking of students I've had.
Mm-hmm.
There are girls who I imagine have full mental, emotional lives, but they just don't stand out as with characteristics like others might.
Right.
Which
is fine. It's just not the story that Lewis was. I just thought it was worth noting. I don't know. What you guys? How do you guys think Diggory ranks as far as boy hero characters.
He's pretty good. He's got some pluck.
He's got some pluck, yeah.
It does set Polly apart. She doesn't like to show fear. She doesn't like to, to be the wuss, So there's always the whole "I'm game if you are" kind of thing that allows them to keep pushing forward together.
Right.
I mean, so Lewis is trying to make this into a kid who's driven by his curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
That's like his defining principle, because he wants him to then become Professor Kirk.
Right.
Like trying to do Captain Kirk's origin story. You have to take all the qualities that will become Captain Kirk's defining principles.
And see them in miniature.
And see them in the young person.
Right.
And so here it's the curiosity. And so he doesn't want to go back to our world. Instead, he wants to go to the next world and explore, because what other opportunity? When are you going to get this opportunity again?
Yeah.
He rings the bell because
he wants to know.
Yeah, he wants to know. He has to know.
Well, I will say, of all the Lewis characters that make mistakes or sins or whatever you want to call them, Diggory's set of mistakes or sins are some of the most relatable to me. In fact, they're so relatable that I hardly see the lesson. Like, yeah, of course you'd ring the bell. Who wouldn't ring the bell? And why would you assume that would necessarily be a bad thing to ring the bell? And of course, the witch followed him into Narnia. Like, that wasn't his fault. He was doing his best. Like, why does Aslan have to make such a big deal out of it?
And where did the riddle and the bell come from in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think we're supposed to ask that.
It's magic, man.
It's magic, man. It's a magic man. Yeah, I like Diggory. He's curious.
Didn't Jada set that up herself?
Somehow.
Probably. It's not explicitly. I think she says, like, implicit. You've fallen into my magical clutches or something.
Yeah, you're just wondering.
She said that,
after
I think
says
she actually
word.
literally says, I said a spell that,
yes,
when somebody came and woke me up.
Yeah, but you just wonder why.
Because she was all alone. Who's she going to rule?
That's true.
Where is she going to go? How is she going to get out?
Jake has figured it out and defended
She's just like any other. She's like a lizard creature that goes into hibernation, waiting for the right time to come back alive and spread her evil. But we'll get to her in a second. Our next on the list of characters, we have to talk about Uncle Andrew. What do you guys think about this Uncle Andrew?
Old mophead himself.
Old mophead himself.
Ours is a high and lonely destiny.
Yes, he is definitely. As I said before, Lewis doesn't mince opinions about his characters. You can tell who he likes. You can tell who he doesn't like. You can tell what kinds of things he likes and admires and what kind of things he despises.
Ever since I saw a picture of Andy Warhol, I have imagined him as Uncle Andrew.
That's good. He has got that mop of blonde hair in his case. I'm going to peg to Uncle Andrew for a blonde.
And full of himself. Mm-hmm. And pretender.
Yeah. Reminded me a lot of the bad guys from Hideous Strength. Kind of that set.
Yeah. Someone who's a charlatan, doesn't really know what they've stumbled into.
But completely full of themselves and alternately cowardly and lazy and...
Doesn't know what to do with this knowledge. They have a lot of knowledge that they don't know what to do with, and that they don't have the smarts to do anything wise or discerning with.
He's a good foil for both the cabbie and Diggory, right? That's the point. Cabbie is a simple countryman, and therefore because he's a simple, honest, hardworking man who can take responsibility for people around him. He's fit to rule Narnia. And
so who he's making fun of with Uncle Andrew is the man who has knowledge that he doesn't know what to do with, right? And he's someone who's full of himself for knowing things that to everybody else.
Well, it's for knowing things that are beyond him, right?
Yeah,
so there's this kind of person who doesn't have the wisdom to do anything with his education, but is highly, highly educated. And so he sits around spinning his opinions out on the internet, right? Or in his stupid little books for the whole world. And he's like caught up in his secret knowledge and his secret insights, but he doesn't have the wisdom to actually apply any of his education to anything actually helpful or practical in real life. So that's it. That's all he's good for, is sitting on the internet or sitting at home alone and writing stupid esoteric books about his deep and cosmic insights into whatever his hobby horses are.
Right. It's guys on Christian message boards arguing about the fine points of extremely esoteric theological ideas.
Yeah.
When they could be like out helping somebody in their church move.
Yeah. It's guys that are like, they've got a little bit of post-millennialism and a little bit of theonomy. And so they're like trying to construct what the laws will be like in the new order when the millennial kingdom. When the millennial kingdom finally comes in, and it's how should we enact, all this biblical law?
I was thinking about the theonomy, guys. I wasn't going to say that, but
I'm going to say it.
And it's like we live in a world now with laws and things.
How about instead of thinking about that, we think about how to be a faithful Christian here and now.
There are some really clear principles. Live peacefully, obey the authorities, stuff like that you could be applying.
And you can apply this, but you can apply this in every arena, right? So it's theology, but in the world of literature, the same sorts of things where you've got people like all of the feminists trying to figure out what was really going on in Jane Austen. Well, all the people who are like the Lewis industrial complex, right?
Yeah.
It's like all these people, these are the people that Lewis makes fun of. Like,
Lewis would have no patience for the Lewis industrial complex. That's the great irony of all of this. I really think, as much as some people have been offended by some of the things we've said, C.S. Lewis would be right on a lot of the things we've said about him. He'd be like, oh yeah, that was
he
dumb.
would be shocked by...
Oh, no, yeah, I'm not glad that people take my stuff that way. In literature, maybe a little closer to home, it's the young guy that's read a little bit of Plato and read a little bit of Dostoevsky, and so he suddenly thinks he's dangerous.
Right.
And it's like, have you lived any life, dude?
Yeah.
Like, have you met a woman, or have you just read Sons and Lovers? Have you, I don't know, words fail me. It's like the 19-year-old who...
Lewis had their number. We read that at the end of Surprised by Joy, which I thought was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, he was friends with Tolkien.
Yeah.
And Tolkien hated the Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, C.S. Lewis is not going... I don't think he would be offended by us being bored with Horse and His Boy.
Right.
We'd have an interesting conversation about it, maybe.
Yeah, he would.
I'd love to.
But
I think he'd be engaged and find it
unless
interesting.
he thought it was silly that we invested as much time.
That would be
that's a distinct possibility
about it. Like, that's more likely.
Yeah.
Right? It's more likely that he would think it was silly that we spend as much time talking about it as we have.
No, he might say, why didn't you guys do George MacDonald or something like that? And we'd rather do you, dude. But I really think you're right.
Well, and that's what, it's okay. So how are you going to mock this sort of person? Well, you take an eccentric old man and you paint him as an eccentric old idiot.
Mm-hmm.
And give him something that's well beyond him that he can't understand, but give him just enough information that he thinks he's special.
He's convinced
and
that
above all of the normal conventional laws of morality.
Right.
Right. So
it's
a little bit of fairy dust, a little bit of sand from another world, and now we're above everybody and everything.
Yeah.
We can do what we want. We can kill children.
Well, and Lewis has such a good line in Villains who are banal and who are buffoonish.
Yeah.
There's so many fantasy writers and writers of all stripes that want to invest. The only thing they really understand in terms of power is evil power. And the only thing that they can imagine is, they're in touch with their dark side. And so they write things about how cool and powerful evil people are. But C.S. Lewis, his villains always end up looking like idiots. Even the White Witch, even Janus in this story. It's just like, they're dumb. The things that they believe are silly, they do not correspond with reality.
Well, that's one of the most powerful images to me of that sort of thing, just in general, is actually from Paralandra, where you have this like devil character who's inhabited the body of Weston, this demonic persona, who's just going to come around to... Did you actually read that book?
I've never read Paralandra, I will admit. But
it's really awesome. And Ransom is there, and his job is to protect the Adam and Eve of this new planet from this devil character.
Right.
And all he does is like sit outside and say his name over and over again. Ransom, Ransom, Ransom.
This is the bad guy.
The bad guy, super petty.
Yeah.
Right. And then he goes and he like finds these little frog-like creatures and he digs his fingernails into them and slits them open and kills them.
Just out of meanness.
Yeah. He like does all these petty little that are just small and mean and pedestrian and like the kid in your neighborhood growing up that threw the rocks at the swans or something like that.
Yeah. All of Lewis's villains. There's the part where Aslan roars and the White Witch in wardrobe, she just like runs out like clutching her dress.
her skirts.
Her skirts.
Well, here it's when she throws the lamppost and then it does nothing to him. So she runs away.
She runs away. Well, and it's also when she's in our world and she's like acting like she's something, and everybody's just like, what? Why? Who is this crazy? You know what? Yeah. She's an idiot, right? And Lewis understands, I think so many, in like our modern TV serial killer dramas, there's always this aura of coolness and of mystery to evil. And Lewis is able both to portray the fact that it does kind of feel like that when you run into evil and it's got its game on, like it feels kind of cool and mysterious and interesting and intriguing, but actually it's buffoonish. The great evil people that we could mention, your Hitlers, your Charles Mansons, your people like this, they're actually buffoons. Hitler thought that he was going to take Germany and he was just going to conquer the world, and he thought that was a good idea. And
yeah, but take Hitler out of his world and drop him into like small town America,
right?
And he becomes a fool.
They actually did that. There's this movie that's coming out called Jojo Rabbit or something like that, where
it's supposed to be pretty.
Hitler is this little Nazi boy's imaginary friend, and it's that conceit is.
Yeah.
Doesn't this become buffoonish if we put it in a different context? So that's getting ahead of ourselves, maybe. But yeah, that's Uncle Andrew, and he's completely made us a slapstick fool of by the.
He gets planted.
Yeah, he actually gets planted. I will say the scene where
they throw the honey at him.
Yeah,
and the squirrels are throwing acorns, and
he doesn't get the dignity.
Falls into the nettles, and
my thing about that chunk is that I was just thinking how delightful that must have been for me as a kid. I must have just thought how funny. I must have just laughed and laughed.
I actually thought the same thing.
Well, no, I thought like I wish it was now because I kind of want the story to keep going. But
there are some other nice moments with Aslan sort of just commenting on Uncle Andrew, like, "Oh, sons of Adam, how clever you are at
making your own demise," or
it's something, stuff along those lines that I'll find one or two of them here real quick. "Oh, Adam's sons, how cleverly you defend yourselves against all that might do you good."
That's a nice line.
That's a great line. And then he says, "I'll give him the only gift he's still able to receive. Sleep and be separated for some few hours from all the torments you've devised for yourself." That's a nice little picture of God sending his rain on the
just and the unjust.
The just and the unjust, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, for some people, really is how it is.
Well, there are people that have devised literally their own torments. I mean, there are people that are dying in hospital beds right now because of sins that they've committed, because they drank themselves to death, because they...
Yep.
And suddenly they get some medicine. Suddenly they get a blanket, I mean, God does have...
And that's all the comfort that they get between now and eternity unless they repent.
Right. But God does give them those little mercies.
Yeah.
And he is a good and generous God like that. That's a nice Aslan moment.
I also like that he becomes harmless in his old age because he won't go near magic. He's just got some old stories.
Right.
And Diggory's dad takes him in.
Yeah, he's just this doddering...
Some language.
Idiot, yeah. Yeah, some language. Lewis with the language. I remember my mom would read this book out loud, and I went back to the book and read it as an adult or as an older kid, and I was like, what's this dem part? Because I remembered the last line of the book as being, "She was a fine lady." And I had to think, oh yeah, thanks, Mom. You cleaned it up a little bit. My mom censored C.S. Lewis.
Yep. There's some of that and some Lord's name in vain type things. I think Lewis got a kick out of making the cabbie one of the most foul-mouthed person in the book, actually.
Right.
By putting the Lord's name in vain in his mouth all the time, but also making him the only actual real Christian in the book.
Yeah, which I suppose makes a good point, but I wish we didn't have to read blasphemy.
Yeah.
In a children's books. Might be a place for it in literature, but not really here, I don't think.
I also wondered, reading it, one of the things that I keep wanting to call her Jill, Polly, that Polly kept in her smuggler's cave was ginger beer. And I wondered as a kid if I thought that was something.
Some illicit, like...
Some
alcoholic.
illicit, yeah. Some
alcohol, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't, by the way, to all the little Jakes out there listening.
Yeah, if you thought that was something, sorry, it's just like ginger ale. Actually, ale is same thing. Ale is an alcoholic beverage, but ginger ale, not. Ginger beer.
Diggory puts on those rings. He goes to the wood between the worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that wood between the worlds?
It's interesting enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, I guess. This is like the coolest conceit in all 7 books, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
The woods?
Oh, I just like the allure of the unknown, The fact that every one of those pools had another world. I mean, I just think that's a really cool fantasy.
And there are all these unexplored worlds.
Yeah, any sort of story that has a hallway with doors that go to infinite places, or I love that idea. I will say that's a really common fantasy trope, and you'll see that in a lot of children's literature, the idea of, the magical thing that goes to a magical place that has lots of magical, the hallway full of doors I think N.D. Wilson, I haven't read these books, but he's got the
cupboards,
100 cupboards, and it can be cheesy, it can be overdone, it can be one of those things that's just banal because we've seen it so many times. I guess banal is my word of the podcast here, but I still think it's cool the way Lewis does it. I like the idea. I like the stillness. I like the fact that it's in a woods with pools. Like, that's just a cool image.
We started at the top of the podcast of the episode talking about how as kids we've all imagined hiding in these prosaic places in our lives that would somehow be transformed into something else.
Right.
And so whether it's a cupboard or a wardrobe or...
Yeah, I had a very specific fantasy of being able to go under my blankets and just be in my own little house. I love when Ron and Hermione and Harry in book 7 are traveling and they have the little tent that they can go into, and then it's its own little apartment or whatever inside the tent. I always like stuff like that. I used to fantasize about that all the time. And actually, it was like my go-to comfort food for my brain kind of fantasy, like when my parents were fighting, or when I was scared, or when I was unhappy, or when it was a rainy day and I was going to have to get up in 5 minutes and go to school. Just any time I wanted to crawl into a mental safe space, I would imagine that I could go into a little house that was contained under my blankets or in my closet or in my car. And actually, I'll still do that to this day, like maybe once or twice a year or something like that. Not all the time, but
pretend like you can go to a different world.
Yeah, no, just imagine how cool it would be to like open up the trunk of my car and there's a staircase and I go down and I've got a whole house, and
open up your fridge and it takes you to the realm of Gozer.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then I love the world that they go to. Charn is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's a dying world.
With a great big red sun.
Yeah.
Dark sky. Yeah.
Which was really scary. Like that little snippet, that little vision of the apocalypse really stuck with me. Just the idea of, in thousands of years, our world could be like this. The sun could be dying. People could be dying. It could be empty. There's these tropes that you see, like we've seen Twilight Zones and movies with that conceit, but I think that was the first time I'd come across it. Just the idea of a world that's on its way out the door.
Yeah, it was cool.
And it's creepy. Just the silence, the statues, the bell.
The red gleam to everything.
The red gleam to everything.
Yeah. Walls that could fall at any minute if you made a big enough sound, which was a little obvious setup. Like in an avalanche, Polly.
Yeah. Right.
A big enough sound could cause all these things to collapse.
Right.
A few moments later, look, a bell. What would happen if we ring this bell?
Don't do it.
But it's really scary. Like I think even as a kid, like I knew, that woman's going to come back, and that nothing good's going to happen. You just
it has that nightmare weird quality, like Pan's Labyrinth when she goes
very
into
nightmarish kind of thing. Yeah.
The hall with the guy with his hands,
with the eyes in his hands.
Yeah, it's this world you don't know why it's there or why it's set up that way,
and
it's terrifying. Yeah.
Well, it has that nightmare quality of inevitability. You sort of know, even as a kid, that, like I said, the woman's going to come alive.
Yeah.
That something bad, nothing good. They're not going to meet a fairy godmother here. They're going to meet a bad guy.
Yeah, this is all bad.
And yet, that there's no stopping it. You can't be like, Diggory, no, wait. We've talked on some podcast about the Alfred Hitchcock theory of suspense, which is that you have surprise, which is where people are sitting around. We're sitting around a table podcasting. Bomb goes off. Jake, Nathan, Brandon are dead. Or you have suspense, which is we see somebody plant the bomb, and then the three of us walk in and we start podcasting.
Yeah.
And you establish, if at the beginning of this episode we had, Benjamin Solzer plant a bomb,
or a machine where we have to give it the right answer.
Right, exactly. Then everyone's on the edge of their seats, even though the podcast is completely normal. They're like, oh no, are the guys going to blow up? This has that quality of, even though we haven't been told exactly what's going on, we know it's not good and we're waiting for the bad surprise.
And then we do blow up.
And then we blow up.
So this is the suspense model, obviously.
Right, yeah.
Everything about, it's like cueing you. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad. What's the bad thing that's going to happen here?
Right. It really is just a haunted house horror movie. I mean, they're just walking through an ominous location. We know something's going to surprise them and be bad. These statues are always creepy anyway. And there's this woman that we spend extra time describing. And so we know it's going to be her. And, it's just creepy. I don't have any more profound thoughts about it than that. So he does the bell thing, which I know people know I've responded to this because I know I've talked about it on more than one episode. The bell thing has always stuck with me. It's been one of those little metaphors that I don't know if it's ever prevented me from sinning, but I certainly think about it a lot when I'm about to sin. Like, oh boy, I just
have to know.
I just have to know what would happen if I ate too many Cheetos. No, that's not a good analogy, but I don't want to use a real analogy because, of course, what I'm thinking of is my days as a teenager looking at pornography, folks. And this metaphor would often occur to me then. There.
That's a helpful metaphor to have.
It is a helpful metaphor to have. And to realize, you know what? You don't really need to know what this kind of pornography looks like. You don't really need to know.
Not for you.
Yeah, it's not for you.
Hashtag Jake's Augustine.
Yes.
Thing.
See other episodes of The Bookening or Sound of Sanity.
Sound of Sanity, yeah.
So then Jadis comes alive.
Maybe I should just give him
just give him a hint. Give him a taste.
Augustine in the Confessions distinguishes between the lust of... He has this little riff on...
Actually, the Apostle John has this riff.
Right. He has a riff on what John says, which is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life. Right. And he talks about the distinction between the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes, which... maybe for you, as it was for me until I read Augustine, they were so closely connected in my mind that I couldn't see the distinction.
Oh, it's just poetic repetition.
Yeah.
It's just basically saying the same thing.
But what Augustine does is he distinguishes, no, there's a difference between the lust of the flesh actually gratifying your flesh with sex, with food, with whatever, and the lust of the eyes, which is a desire to see things that are not for your eyes to see. And it's a separate sin, and it's a different kind of thing. And he gives the example of how you will stop on the side of the road to go and look at a dead body. Rubberneckers at an accident. There's nothing about it that's pleasing or satisfying. It might make you throw up. All of this stuff. It's really just not for you. It's an unhealthy, morbid curiosity for things that are not for your eyes to see, that are forbidden from you. Unhealthy, sick, perverse curiosity as opposed to a perverse desire for gratification. Super helpful distinction for me in my own fight against pornography and things like that.
Well, and it can be as simple as, you know what? I don't really need to know what my ex-girlfriend is doing on Facebook. Like that's not for me to know.
Exactly.
There's all kinds of things in life that are perfectly good things even, but they're just not my things.
Yeah, but a lot of social media is that. There are these people out there and they don't really realize when they're posting the intimate details of their life, that you specifically are looking in on that because you've not talked to them in 10 years. They're thinking of a handful of people, but you also happen to be friends with them. There's just these things that this is not for you to know.
Yeah, for me, actually, one of the applications was I stopped watching true crime documentaries because I was just like, you know what? I understand enough about my own evil heart. I'm not gaining any insight there. And I don't need to know the morbid details of how such and such a real life person was murdered. It's not helping me. It's certainly not helping them. And why do I want to know? Like, what's interesting about this? I know they were murdered. There's no suspense here. It's just like the only real interest in this is just to know something nasty that happened.
Yeah, a lot of as much as pornography, a lot of slasher films and stuff like that feed the same sort of desire or same types of desires.
Mm-hmm.
The lust of the eyes, the desire to see and know things that are forbidden, they're wrong, they're evil.
Well, I think a lot of the interest that people have as they go down, get deeper into pornography isn't just about I feel lust. It's about I feel that kind of lust, just to know the kind of sick things that people do or the kind of weird things, the kind of fetishes that people want to know about those things and they feel gratified by.
Yeah, I need to know everything about every kind of perversion. I need to know everything about every kind of woman.
And you know what?
I need to know and see it all.
You don't
consume it.
You don't.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't. God made you, if you're a man, God made you for one woman.
But I need to understand more about depravity so that I can understand the grace of the gospel.
Nope. God made you for one woman. And if you're a woman, God made you for one man.
And you don't have to know about every...
Unless you don't get to get married. And
well, in that case, God made you for no women.
And that's... and therefore,
That's
forget
okay.
it. That's okay.
Yeah.
If you're single, that's it. End of story. It's not for you to know the secrets of sex.
Yeah, that's
And
something.
that's something that's a beautiful, fun thing to figure out with your wife someday. Don't spoil it.
Can confirm. Recently married. Actually, it's been interesting. I think it's not that I love to watch awful things in movies, but I always had more of a blasé attitude about nudity and things like that. That just having been married now and having been in a relationship before that for a little while, it sickens me in a different way. It sickens me in a more specific way. It used to be like, oh, I shouldn't be watching this, but now it's like, she shouldn't be doing this. She shouldn't be showing this. This is not mine to see, and it's also not hers to give away to the world like this, just to make money or just to get ahead in her career. It's gross, and it's all implicit in Diggory ringing that bell. Lewis understood temptation. I think Lewis really, besides his literary theory, which is wonderful, his great spiritual or psychological insight was into temptation. He understood how temptation worked. Screwtape Letters is great. Mm-hmm. This is great. A lot of
stronger parts of Mere Christianity.
Stronger parts of Mere Christianity. Stronger parts of Narnia. It's Lucy with the book in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. It's Edmund
with the Turkish Delight.
Yeah, it's Eustace with the treasure. Like he just really got it. It's the guys fighting over.
Those are some of the very best moments of Narnia.
Yeah, probably I would say off the top of my head. So then Jadis comes alive, and did you feel like she lived up to what the White Witch should have been, for a prequel?
I think this is a common sort of thing to do, and I think Lewis does it about as well as you could want, which is, you see this even in like Maleficent's a good example of this, actually, right? Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent is just this horrible,
just
evil,
a force of nature.
She's force of evil
personified. Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't know anything about her except she's scary. And what's scary about her is we don't even know why she's evil. She's just evil. And then they go back and try to give her this great big multi-movie backstory that makes her sympathetic, but explains how she gets to be what she is. And I've not seen those movies. I understand they're pretty bad.
Right.
Whatever. Lewis basically does the same thing here. In The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Jadis is evil.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We don't know why. She's always been in Narnia, for all we know. There's a time before Jadis that nobody can remember. It's almost legendary. She's just the White Witch, and she's evil.
Right.
And she gets brought down in that movie to a pretty, like you said earlier about the villains in Lewis, they always end up being comedic.
Right.
In how petty, small, and pedestrian they are.
They're stupid. They're Tom and Jerry. They're Wile E. Coyote. They're just like...
Yeah. So to go back and to give her a broader story, fill out her backstory. She's from another world, a dying world. She was a great enchantress in this world. She learned the power of destroying all worlds. We're going to have a little commentary on the nuclear bomb here a little bit later.
Right.
Like...
Yeah. Oh, children, your world has something quite like that. Is it Aslan that has a little anti-nuclear speech?
Yeah,
I think it is him.
Yeah, he says, take warning from Charn, and surely our world isn't that evil. And then he's like, well, there are evil people in it, and they may yet one day discover a power by which they can do the same kind of damage that she did. And
it's a little dated, but that's okay. It's okay to...
You got to put yourself back there and think about that kind of nuclear fear. Like, that was a real terrifying thing for a lot of people for a long time.
And a real threat.
Yeah. And, maybe by the time this episode comes out, North Korea will have dropped the bomb and everyone will be like, not so dated now, Nathan.
We don't feel the pressure of the Cold War and a nuclear holocaust.
His impeachment.
Right.
But I remember a little bit of that as a kid growing up. I felt the echoes of that as a kid growing up, for sure.
Yeah, I did say it in the most condescending voice possible, but that was mostly just me having fun. I think it is dated in the sense that it no longer applies in the same way. We don't feel the pressure when Aslan makes his little speech, but it's not a bad moment. It's just a moment. It's just interesting to observe that Lewis did something that doesn't translate to our time.
Now it's carbon emissions.
One day, children.
Until it goes back to nuclear war.
Right.
I guess the point is she had this whole great big epic battle with her sister and all this stuff in the past. And she's got to cope with New Worlds. Just when she comes to our world, it's nice and interesting and fun to see these other worlds engaging with our world, which is something that hasn't happened in Narnia before.
Right. Actually,
We go to Narnia.
right.
Narnia doesn't come to our world. And then Jadis actually, to know that the White Witch has actually been in our world.
In England.
And also that she was powerless.
And that she had, yeah.
She was she was 7 foot tall, and she was strong, and she could kill people. She could tear a lamppost out of the ground, or the arm of a lamppost straight off the lamp. But her magic was nothing in our world, just didn't work.
Right. Well,
But then you get to Narnia, you see all of these things happen. You see her be, and then we have the little Garden of Eden thing.
yeah. Well, we get there in a second. I did want to say on your point that Lewis fills in her backstory, and you could argue maybe that it's better to just leave her as a force of nature kind of villain, a more satanic creature. What I think the neat trick that he does, and I've seen other authors and creators have done a similar thing, is he tells you a lot more about her without really telling you anything.
Right.
What's lame is when somebody goes back and tries to explain the evil in the sense of why was it evil, like Kathy in East of Eden, Steinbeck's he begins her story by saying, some people are born monsters. I don't know why. If Steinbeck then at the end of the book said, but actually it was because her daddy beat her or she was molested, then that would be super lame. But Lewis actually doesn't do that. Well, the lame version of this is they go to Charn, and there's this little girl who's being picked on at an orphanage, and she's getting more mad and mad.
Beaten by her dad.
Or beaten by her dad or whatever.
And then she discovers her evil powers, and,
I said that was lame, but that actually sounds kind of cool, actually, now that we're describing it. But
what all the movies do with the Grinch.
Right, yeah, that's what the movies do with the Grinch. That's exactly right. That stupid Grinch movie. The people in Whoville didn't appreciate him because he was green. It's that kind of thing.
They made fun of him.
They made fun of him.
He was in, and I think with Maleficent,
it's like they drove her out of the kingdom because she was too powerful, or no,
I think that she got raped or something.
Oh, did she? Well, there you go.
I think I read
saw
something about that.
I'm so sorry, Maleficent. I did not mean to make light of that. Yeah,
but like
maybe she got Disney thing that was a metaphor for raped. I think that might be, but neither one of us has seen the movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I don't know exactly.
In any case, that would have been the lame thing to do with the witch. Is here's why she's evil. Lewis actually doesn't tell us why she's evil. He leaves that mysterious.
To put the finger on it, here's why she's a victim.
Right. Exactly. Right. Here's why she's a victim. Here's why it's actually more complicated. No, it's not more complicated. She was always a psychopathic, horrible person that was into deep, mysterious, evil, dark stuff.
Yeah.
But one time she had a sister and they had a fight and she did some crazy stuff and then she went to... So it's like we fill in some history.
Yeah.
But we don't solve the central mystery that is the White Witch's psychology. She's still just a witch,
yeah,
basically.
It's like Tolkien was a Sauron. He never tries to make Sauron a good guy, but he does give you some history behind him in the Silmarillion.
Yeah, it's like, here's what Sauron was like, how he appeared. Here's some additional information for anyone that's interested. It's a little bit like what Lucas does, that great author, George Lucas, does with Palpatine in the prequel trilogy. It's like, here's some interesting aspects of who Palpatine was, but we're never really going to tell you. I'm sure the nerds will tell me that, like, in the books, they actually do explain what happened to Palpatine and all that. And we get some hints with Darth Pelagius and stuff like that. But basically, we get Palpatine's still just the devil. He's still just bad. It's just we could just get some slightly different flavors of bad.
We can't have this episode without talking about Harry Potter.
That's right.
When you get Voldemort for the first time, she doesn't try to say that the orphanage made Voldemort. Tom Riddle was always kind of a psychopathic kid.
Well, we did
the orphanage didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
Well, we can argue about that again, but I remember arguing in our episodes. And
we were against you.
Yes, I realize you were. I wanted to argue that she kind of tried to split the difference, and she should have just chosen psychopath. But she does a good job. She does pretty good. She does pretty good.
Yeah, and to go back to this though, yeah, it's interesting. You get some of the White Witch's background. You get to see how she becomes the White Witch when she eats that apple. But it all makes sense, and none of it spoils her mystery as the White Witch.
Right.
Because, when you see her for the first time, you don't get the whole history behind that. She's in this cathedral-like room, and there's still a mystery and power to that as well.
Yeah.
So there's still a whole history that you don't have with her.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
And she's been in this world for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah. And even the fight between her sister, like she hints at the fact that she had to do horrible things to get the deplorable word.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it again deals in that sort of
a mystery.
It deals
Uncle
in that
Andrew
mystery.
also had to do horrible things to get the knowledge that he got.
Who did?
Uncle Andrew did.
Uncle Andrew did. Yeah.
They both had to do horrible things.
Yep. Yeah.
A lot of
there's-
parallelism.
Yeah,
that they
like when
set up.
Voldemort has
Yeah.
to go to that one country that he disappears for years.
Mm-hmm. Or like Palpatine with Darth Pelagius.
Yeah.
It's all the great stories.
Yeah, all the great ones.
But I was like, with the Star Wars thing, I was actually going to compare it to is Rogue One flying over those statues. This has that same feeling of, oh man, I'd like to know what the real story with Charn is. Like,
Yeah.
when is some nerdy millennial writer gonna write some knockoff Lewis books that fill in all this backstory for us?
Sounds like Warhorn has an opportunity here.
That's right. What's the guy's name that owns the Lewis library these days? We can get in touch
Walter
with him.
Hooper.
Walter, let's get in touch with Hooper. See if
Oh,
he wants to
Hooper.
cut a deal. Well, me and Jake can churn out some Charn books. Brandon, you want to help write the
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
the Legend of Charn?
It'd be fun to get Salman Rushdie to do it.
Let's get Salman Rushdie to do it. That sounds good. Midnight's Charn.
That would be a crazy book.
I'm so sorry, folks. Please forget that I said Midnight's Charnton. So we go to the world. There's a little kerfuffle, and then we get back to Narnia, and we get to the creation story.
Yep.
I think we were all dreading. Is it fair to say we were all dreading the creation stuff?
Yeah, I was worried that I was going
worried.
to hate it as much as I hated all the other Aslan stuff.
Well, Brandon, I think you've made fun of it on mic because you said, "Oh, the lion's going to sing it into existence" or something like that.
And it wasn't as bad as I feared it would be.
It wasn't as bad. Was it at all bad? Did you guys feel at all uncomfortable with this, or just like it was cheesy?
I didn't
or-
feel too bad about it at all.
No.
I liked the way the stars flew up into the sky.
That was cool.
and
Yeah. Where they were
the
just suddenly
image of
there.
it. They were there and they were singing, or were they? Or we don't know. It was a mystery.
Yeah.
Diggory swore that it was the stars in later life,
Yeah.
that it was the stars themselves that were singing. And I even like the idea of Aslan's speech being song.
Mhm.
I like that. I just like that idea. I don't want to pretend like he's got some insight into the way that God actually made the world.
And I don't think he's trying to pretend like he does.
But
There.
That was the nice thing, is that it didn't feel like he was straining for any big point about how creation.
Yeah, I
must
think he
have
just
been,
thought of
or-
a fun way to have, or an interesting way to have Aslan bring this world into existence. Yeah, there's some mythology built into that, like you thought like Orpheus or something singing.
yeah,
But-
but also, where were you? I flung out the lines of the heavens and the morning stars sang for joy, or whatever
Yeah.
it was, right?
And so there wasn't, and I think it's what you were saying, there's not the weird stretching to try and make some sort of theological, he wasn't trying to mix his, not even paganism, his imaginative desire for the world with theology and with scripture.
No, it's much more like, okay, I've written 5 books now that have this deity creature at the center of it. This deity creature were to create a world like this, how would he do it?
Yeah.
And so it feels more natural, like less like, let's pretend like Aslan and Jesus really are the same person, but more like Aslan's the creator of this very particular world. And Aslan's a character that we've lived with for 5 books.
And he lets
And
people.
this is a world we've lived in for 5 books. So
Yeah.
how would that work?
And he also lets his people respond without the weird Lewisian, like, I'm going to drink this. If I could drink this water, even if it killed me, I would still drink it.
right.
Or eat me, Aslan. Instead, here we can all one of my favorite lines in this series is when the cabbie sees this and said, if I had known things like this were in the world, I'd have been a better man my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel that. I mean, yeah, there are times when you feel that way.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yep.
man, if I could only remember this every day, I'd be a better man for it. That's a moving line. And then also Aslan's not controlling everything. Like, you don't get the sense that Aslan was like somehow manipulating. He wasn't a cat hiding in Charn, watching them and making
Right.
sure that they, and then, getting everything to here to this point. Instead, once he finds out what happened, he's sad and he's upset. And now he's like, okay, well, now you're going to have to go to this tree. And even though the ending seems a little tacked on and weird, it all works. And it doesn't feel cheesy, or it doesn't feel Gnostic-y and weird and fake like some of the stuff in Even the ones that I liked, like the Dawn Treader.
No, that's exactly what Jake is saying. It feels like Lewis wasn't thinking about what is there in the Bible or in real life that I want to make a point about. It feels like he was simply extrapolating, not from life, but from Narnia. Like, okay.
Yes. Aslan doesn't have to become a lamb.
Right.
No, Narnia has to become Narnia, and it has to become Narnia by the hand of this lion creature that I have made the god of this world.
Yeah.
And so what's a consistent way to get from point A, Aslan, to point B, Narnia?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so there's moments like where he has the animals gather around him, and then he chooses some of them to be talking beasts and some of them to be dumb beasts, and tells them to treat the dumb beasts with a decent amount of respect that just feel... I'm sure people stretch to make that into some deep point about the Christian life or about the way God's ordered the world, but actually it just feels like, well, let's justify what happens in Narnia now.
That is the one place that I think he is making a point, which is, virtue is what gives you nobility. And
yes.
And so I have given you an intrinsic kind of nobility, maintain your virtue or you will become a beast. And he's making a comment even about humanity. I mean, he is, in fact, making a comment about our humanity, that the degree to which we lose our virtue, we lose our humanity.
Right. I don't disagree with that. I think the reason
that was contrived to make a point, actually, is I guess all I'm saying. It doesn't feel that way.
Well, it's making a little moral point based on universal wisdom, which Lewis does all the time in all kinds of places and is very good at. It's not trying to say anything all that deep about, theology or something, which is where Lewis runs into trouble.
I thought he was trying to admit to being a Calvinist.
Was he? Oh, because
unless
he's choosing these animals.
Well, unless he's a horrible racist and he's actually making judgments about pygmies in Africa.
If you want racism, then listen to our episode on The Horse and His Boy, folks.
Yeah, there's lots of it there.
Oh,
yeah.
I just want to say the cabbie and his wife, love him. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Forgot all about them. Was really pleased to see them pop up it's always delightful when you read a book or watch a movie or something that you haven't watched for years and you're like, oh yeah, this is in here. I really like this. This is cool. I hope this goes where I think I remember it goes. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, he's the king and the first king and queen of Narnia. It's just this cabbie.
That to me was always one of the best parts of the book that I would like. One of the things that I never forget.
It was not burned into my brain.
The thing that I forget is like the crawl space between the houses and stuff like that.
Maybe I could say it felt the slightest bit condescending, like the way that a rich person writes poor people, or the way that a white collar person writes blue collar people,
the way a northerner writes a southerner.
Precisely, yeah. It was done with kindness, and I liked the cabbie, and I liked his wife, and I thought that whole storyline was sweet.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, when that sort of thing is healthy is when you pick up on the fact that the person writing about them, he's not looking down on them. He actually kind of wishes he was them.
Yeah, I think he does.
Lewis wishes that he was a simpler man.
I was a little nervous that he had that moment where he was like, and his speech slowed down and he started to speak less like he was a Cockney.
Right.
And I thought that we were going to see him then. I was afraid that we were going to see him actually become more dignified and high in his speech or whatever.
Right.
He didn't do that. What he did do was maybe slow him down a little bit, but it was less make him more highbrow and take more of the city out of him.
Right.
Yeah.
He's been infected by London a little bit.
Right. But it was sweet. It was sweet.
It was great.
And it was sweet that Aslan brought his wife along, and it's just a nice, I don't know,
great.
It's just fun. It's this random cabbie got sucked into another world and became the first king of Narnia. Like, who would
his horse gets to become the first flying Pegasus?
His horse did get to become the first flying Pegasus, and they went on a little adventure that we're going to talk about now.
Yeah.
They go to Eden to pluck the apple, and
because for some reason they need to plant a tree that is going to now protect Narnia. Though, do we ever find out how the tree dies?
I think it just dies of old age, doesn't it? Because Aslan basically says it'll last for a few hundred years, and then the witch will... This is only a stopgap. It's not an actual...
I think it's fun that there's a mystery there.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine there being... The witch goes and is far away, but, as the Narnians spread out, she sort of infects the dwarves, and she gathers her forces, and she sends them on missions with their dwarf axes to chop down the tree, and the Narnians are fighting to protect the tree, and one day... there's a whole story there that you could draw up that I like that it's left to the imagination.
Yeah. Let's not leave
Maybe it does die of old age. Maybe there's this whole story of the witch that she figures out how to finally get it killed.
I think we get the rights, Jake, and let's write that one too. We'll write Midnight's Charndon and tell the story of Charn. Let's tell the story of this tree.
Yeah.
I don't think anything should be left to anyone's imagination.
That one can be written by Kazuo Ishiguro.
Yeah, why would you want to tell an original story when you could just live
now
in
you tree me?
Yeah.
These Lewisian sandboxes that are perfect?
Yeah.
Why would anybody parody something when they could just write a letter to Wormwood?
Can we talk about that for a second, Jake? I do not like it when people write their own Wormwood letters.
What? I've written like 5,000 of them.
Have you, Jake?
Yeah, I'm in a habit of...
Don't.
Every time I think, man, there's something that I want to sarcastically parody, I think, oh, you know what? There's only one really good way to do this. That's to write a letter to Wormwood from Screwtape.
Well, Jake, I think you're doing a little sarcastic parody right now.
Oh, you caught me,
you don't actually do
dear
this.
Wormwood.
My dear Wormwood, a lot of Christians are writing faux Lewis letters to Wormwood. It's really annoying. They are all creativity is dead, and people just have to latch on to old conceits and do tired old formulas instead of being creative and coming up with their own satirical formulas.
Oh, you know what else would be good is if there was a newspaper, but that it wasn't a newspaper. It was like fake news with satirical headlines that had stories that were really stupid, but the headlines were...
You mean The Onion? That's pretty funny.
Yeah, The Onion. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah.
Well, what if we did
The Onion
Christian
was
version?
a good modern take on an old art form.
Yeah.
Yeah, what if we did that, but we just made it Christian?
Yeah, we could call it like the...
But we could still rip on the same sort of like... The Onion's sort of like maybe liberal or whatever, just from a conservative standpoint. So like we rip on Obama, we could maybe rip on Trump if we needed to prove that we're not Trumpians or whatever. But, we could rip on Pelosi, really big targets in the Christian world like Joel Osteen and Pentecostals.
So we're going to go for like hard targets that'll really make Christians feel bad?
Yeah, like Joel Osteen.
Like Joel Osteen, okay. Yeah, that'll really put people on their heels.
Call it like the Galilee Gazette.
The Galilee Gazette could be good. Galilee Gazette's almost too good, though.
Almost too good. No, what's another? You could do...
What's a bad place in the Bible?
Sodom? The Gomorrah Gazette. The Assyrian...
No, I was going to go to Assyrian too.
I'm not quite feeling it, though. Something in that area.
Oh man, what else you got there? You got the
Chaldean Chronicle.
The Chaldean Chronicles.
That's pretty good.
Pretty great. I think we're almost there.
What else you got?
Canaanite Times.
Canaanite Times.
That's
not
pretty
bad.
Great. That's it.
We've already got the Canaanite Times, right? It's in New York, you guys. I mean, come on. This is the kind of satire we can do in our newspaper.
Well, there's
the New York Times.
There's always
it's like the same. It's like basically just the same thing.
Yeah,
like
it's
just Canaan. Yeah,
I'm glad that we did that because I wasn't sure I got it.
Yeah, no. We need to explain things. Maybe if we can make our headlights long. Because I think really length is the soul of wit. So the more time it takes to kind of read and piece together the idea, the funnier it'll be.
Yes, you're a bee.
A bee?
Yeah. Thought I heard a bee. Never mind.
No, I don't.
It was like...
it'd be a weird time of night to hear a bee, but I could have sworn I heard a bee buzzing. Oh, never mind.
Huh.
All right.
Yeah, that's weird.
Well, anyway, back to...
what about Babylon?
Yeah. Babylon Babbler.
Babylon, oh how the mighty have...
The whore of? It's not a good place.
The Babylon whore?
No, Brandon, Christians might not like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Babylon 5?
Babylon 5's a TV show.
Oh, my bad.
Babylon 3?
Maybe we can do like a parody where it's like Obama and Hillary. We need 3 more. Then we'd have the Babylon 5. Am I right?
That's great.
Like Joel Osteen. We just need 2.
Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's good. People like Darth Vader references.
Anyhow, Jadis and...
The Babylon Bee!
Well, that sounds great, Nathan.
Brandon, you heard that bee, and I put it together. You know how people always call their newspapers bees?
No.
What?
I don't. Can you explain?
And you know how there's not any scriptures against stealing, so it's okay for us to just steal this idea from the Onion, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they're pagans.
Right. Yeah. Well, Israelites
So we have to
plundered the
redeem
Egyptians.
what they have
Well,
done.
no, I mean, if you just do the Christian version of something that pagans are doing, that's a totally, completely unique
Yeah,
way
I
of
mean,
doing it. Have you ever listened to DC Talk?
yeah. By the way, you guys never told me whether or not you liked my pitch for the TV show Breaking Good. Did you guys read that script yet?
Well, guys, I dare say we've engaged in our own hilarious satire tonight.
Hilarious.
We sure did take down an already dead
And
institution.
here we thought we weren't going to make anybody mad this episode.
Oh, people don't
No,
still
people
care
don't
about
care
the
anymore.
Babylon V, do they? So Jadis, so Act 3. Do you guys like this Act 3? What do you think about this Act 3?
The whole quest on
The whole
Pegasus
quest.
to go get the...
It seemed
Felt a little perfunctory to me.
Yeah, it seemed a little bit out of place. I mean, I know what he was trying to do. He wanted to tie all the threads together. He had the mother who was
Right.
sick and dying, and so the tree of the land of youth.
Right.
And there had to be also this idea that he brought the witch into the world, and so he was going to have to be the one to help make it right.
Yeah, that was
Why
fine.
do sons of Adam need to sit on the throne?
Where did the wardrobe come from, and how
That
does
was cool.
connected to the
I'd forgotten
magic?
about that. That was cool.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I've always loved that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That tree. Yeah.
And so it's
I actually had a little like, yay, when I was reading, just a little childlike moment of like, oh, that's fun. I didn't actually clap my hands, but I may as well have. I actually felt elated. Like the wardrobe came from that.
So it's a little clunky in the sense that it just feels
Man,
tagged.
this was your favorite book as a kid, and you didn't latch onto that or remember it. That's
It's been so many years since I've read these, and I remember wardrobe so clearly, but man, I have not remembered these books well.
Yeah,
I
was
like
the
the
same way.
two things that I remember about this book. The three things, only three things. This is the origin story of the wardrobe.
Right.
This is the origin story of how the White Witch got into Narnia, and Uncle Andrew's obnoxious, and Diggory and magic rings and stuff.
I didn't even remember
And
the rings.
singing creation.
Yeah.
I think the reason it feels weird at the end is because when you have a creation story, that kind of seems like the high point, and that seems kind of like the climax.
Yeah.
And so for the story then to have another act after that, it's kind of like the weird ending to, which is it Henry V, where suddenly you have like a
He's got
marriage squabble at the end.
Yeah. He's gonna have a conversation with that lady.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels tacked on, and even though it's an interesting little myth. It goes on a little long, but still, I'm more willing to forgive it in this book.
Yeah, I liked it fine.
Well, you've got, a temptation in the garden, and
Yeah,
I have to say, and again, it's fine. I was expecting, and I know I said positive energy in this episode. I was expecting a better temptation scene, given how awesome C.S. Lewis is at temptation scenes. This one felt, again, just a little perfunctory. Her big thing is you can save your mother, I guess, and Aslan. It's good. I was just expecting like to walk away with some fresh insight into temptation or something, or into the way the devil works, and it felt relatively straightforward compared to a lot of his temptation scenes.
yeah. The temptation scene in the silver chair is better.
Yeah, the temptation scene in the silver chair is maybe the high watermark of Lewis temptation scenes.
It felt like a watercolor.
gotta read Paralandra.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
For
will.
that.
There
You
you
do.
go. Yep, I will one of these days.
But yeah, these last scenes did feel a little bit like I said, like a watercolor.
Mm-hmm.
Felt kind of thinly painted, but I was still fine with it.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, we'll see how the lampposts do.
You felt like he was starting to run out of gas, is what you felt like.
Mm-hmm.
Like he knew he had to do this somehow, and so let's put some wings on a horse and get them up to this apple so we can get this over with.
Right. Well, if you did the movie, you'd probably have the witch would chase them or something.
Yeah.
It'd be some action scene or something.
Yeah, so you feel like either he had to do it this way and get it over with, or he had to have Aslan say, and that'll be what happens in The Magician's Nephew Part 2.
Right.
And then deal with that in a completely different book.
Yeah. I think it may have also rung home a little bit more for me if I'd felt like Diggory really did anything wrong. I suppose he did by ringing the bell, and that's the point. But the fact that the witch ended up in Narnia to me didn't feel like she was just following them. There was nothing they could do. He didn't mean to bring the witch into Narnia.
But he's the one who woke her up.
He is the one that woke her up.
So, I mean, they brought an evil into this.
But he had already apologized to Polly. It's weird for somebody to learn a lesson, already regret something, and then have Aslan rub it in their face.
And how innocent is a world that's going to have a Bacchus anyways?
Yeah.
Maybe he never would have been there without the witch.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Although we see the river gods and stuff appear.
Yeah.
Naiads and Dryads.
The Naiads and Dryads.
Already doing their things.
What else do you guys want to say about this book? Anything?
Not really.
No, I mean, you get even the things that like would bother me in other books, like the apple being more real than everything else in the other our world.
Mm-hmm.
You get some of his weird Platonism, but still, I mean, And I think maybe Lewis himself was maybe chilling out about some of his weirdness with this book. So I'm interested to see how it'll play out with the last battle.
Not looking forward to it. But I wasn't looking forward to this one either and was surprised.
No, maybe I'll be surprised. That's what I'm hoping.
I'm really hoping the last battle
Because
pulls a bit of a
the
dark
silver
horse.
chair. Well, because arguably even the weirdness wasn't necessarily there with the horse and his boy. It was just like a lame conceit, right? That was Jake's point.
A little more weirdness would have gone a long way.
Absolutely.
It was a lame
Yeah.
conceit about Providence that didn't really pan out. It was like, I'd rather just read the Pilgrim's Progress.
Right.
Where at least Bunyan, just, you know what's going on. And it's kind of fun. But here, in that book, it was just it was cheesy. But here, it's got some of that magic back, and I don't think he's really trying to make some... So in the weird parts of the Voyage of the Dawn Treader and those where it gets strange at the end, that's because he's trying to do something. He's trying to give you his Lewisian Gnostic vision of heaven. And here he's not.
This book feels like a very chillaxed Lewis wrote this book. He's not straining for anything. He's just like, I know how to write Narnia now. This is my sixth one. I can write one of these.
He's hit some grand slams now. He's just swinging.
He's just swinging. Yeah, he's not trying anything. He got it out of his system with all the weirdness in The Horse and His Boy. Got to make fun of the Arabs. Now he's just lighting his pipe and telling a good story.
It's like Goldschmidt after he finally got that 30th home run of the year. Now he's just hitting them.
He's just hitting them. Let's assign our... You know what? Actually, I'm going to make people wait. Let's quickly call out our Patreons, our patrons real quick, and then let's assign our Lamppost rating. So this is like, we're going to commercial here. If you want to be a patron that gets a donor shout out, which is what we're about to do,
we are.
Then you go to patreon.com/the Bookening, and you sign up for $10 or more a month. We will shout you out. If you can get us to $1,000 by October 31st, then Jake, Brandon, and myself will dress as swans. We will play trumpets, and we will march around the courthouse in Bloomington 7 times.
We have said we would do this.
We have said we will do this. More importantly, we will unlock our donor level where we can read Tolkien next year, which is what we really want to do. We want to be making $1,000 by January 2020 so that we can just weave.
Unlock the next superpower or whatever. That sounds like a video game.
It really does, but we just want to weave Tolkien in through next year. We want to talk about the
Tapestry
Hobbit,
of Tolkien.
The Tapestry of Tolkien. We're going to write a little ebook called The Tapestry of Tolkien. But let's shout out our donors. You know what? I'm just going to go back and forth, and you guys do whatever you feel like with this, all right?
Thanks.
Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds, Jake.
Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds, Nathan.
The Artful Anthony Dodger, Brandon.
The Artful Anthony Dodger, Nathan.
Little Anthony's Cigar Store.
You didn't say anything.
I was not paying attention to
Little Anthony's Cigar Store, Nathan.
to what the conceit was.
The Immortal Chelsea E.
The Immortal Chelsea E.
Wow.
I have no idea what the conceit is.
There is no conceit.
There is no conceit.
There is no conceit.
Jake.
It's not like I would pay attention anyway. It's not like I would do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, what difference does it make? Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley, Jake.
Jimmy Beam and Little Annie. You know what I was doing?
What's that?
The publication order is not the same as the written order. And I was looking at the order in which these guys were written.
Oh, let's hear it.
And so, interesting fact. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian were all written in 1949.
Mm-hmm.
Don Treader and The Horse and His Boy were written in 1950. Silver Chair was written in 51. Last Battle was written in 53. And The Magician's Nephew was written in 54.
So this really is him just chillaxing.
That it completely explains it.
This is the last one that he wrote.
That makes so much sense.
And then he had them all. The Horse and the Boy was one of the earlier ones, actually.
That also makes sense.
So Silver Chair, Last Battle, and then Magician's Nephew. Those are the last 3 that he wrote. Even if you think about the Platonism stuff that we're going to get in the Last Battle, like that's all out. he's done it all.
He got it out of his system, and then he wrote one of just the nicest flowing, cool little Narnia books, Magician's Nephew.
And he prepared. They were published. So Lion and Witch, that was published in 50, Caspian 51, Dawn Treader 52. That had been done for 2 years at that point. Silver Chair 53, that had been done for 2 years. Horse and His Boy 54, it had been done for 4 years.
Wow.
So it had been sitting on a shelf. Magician's Nephew was published in 55, and it had only been sitting around for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And The Last Battle was published in 56, had been finished for 3 years by that time.
Huh.
So he finished The Magician's Nephew last, and maybe he didn't give himself a lot of time to tinker with it, and it's fun to speculate anyway. Oh, Brandon, while we're at it, I'm sorry, donors, we'll get back to you in a second. What planet? Actually, why don't you describe the qualities of the planet, and we'll see if Jake can guess the planet based on the qualities. Little game I like to play, or like to watch Jake and Brandon play.
Venus.
I bet that's right.
Genius. All right. Sweetness, warmth, beauty, laughter, motherliness, sexuality, fertility,
Sounds like Pluto.
vitality, creativity.
Hey, you want to make a connection that
Its metal is copper.
that backs up Michael Ward?
What's that?
Paralandra is also Venus.
In the Ransom trilogy,
In the
Lewis
Ransom
calls Venus
trilogy.
Paralandra.
And it is the place, we have the creation story in Paralandra,
Yeah.
as we do here, where we also have temptation scene, where we have a devil surrogate tempting in the Garden of Eden. I don't know what that has to do with Venus, but we already made the connection of this book to Venus. So maybe,
Maybe she's the most tempting of the goddesses. I mean, she's a
Well, according to this picture they have
bit
on
of,
here.
bit of a Brandon, for shame. She's a bit of an alluring figure. I don't know. You know who probably does know? Lily of the Valley.
Lily of the Valley.
I don't know why Lily of the Valley would know that. Andrew and Esther, the Lovebirds, Brandon.
Andrew and Esther, the Lovebirds, Nathan.
The Keith Master.
The Keith Master.
David's Mighty Men Trucking.
David's Mighty Men Trucking.
John and Jill, Little Baby Max.
John and Jill, Little Baby Max.
Jay and Katie, who are cold and love cheese, and also C.S. Lewis, and quilting till we have faces.
We're cold and love cheese, including C.S. Lewis, even till we have faces.
And also the Michael Ward book they like, which
And also the Michael Ward book they
makes
like.
me think maybe there's something to
Which
it.
makes
I don't
me
know.
think maybe there's something
I like
to
Jane
it. I don't
Katie.
know.
Fairy Princess of Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Fair Princess of Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Fairy.
Fairy.
Council Prime
And
Adam.
also
Prime
fair.
Adam.
Galactic Princess Emily.
Galactic Princess Emily.
Jeremy the Dark-Coated Lord of
Jeremy
Death
the
and
Dark-Coated
Dark
Lord of
Prince
Death
Bear and
and
Princess Bug of Death Doom Die.
What?
Gotcha.
Death, Doom, Die.
Nathan, not me.
Nathan, not Nathan.
Maya. Here's looking at you, Maya. Ryan the Red Avenger and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
Ryan the Red Avenger and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
Danny the Dude.
Danny the Dude.
That's how it should be said from now on. DJ Sammy G.
DJ Sammy G.
Benny and Danny Tiberius.
Benny and Danny Tiberius.
Dana, I should
Dana.
say.
Dana.
Eric and Catherine
Eric
from
and Catherine
Yon Window Breaks.
From Yon Window Breaks.
Professor and Lady X.
Professor and Lady X.
Lavender's green, Dylan, Dylan. Lavender's blue. Lavender's green, Dylan, Dylan. I love you too.
Oh, you're
not
so nice.
at all the lyrics to that song, but somehow me and Brandon think that they are. I looked them up the other day. It's not correct at all.
I wondered.
Noah Constrictor, our new friend.
Noah Constrictor.
Actually, not our new friend. Our friend that we forgot to shout out for a couple of months. He got lost in the shuffle somehow. Mara cheap, 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 cheap. I wonder if she likes that. She paid for a Lewis thing. I don't know. Mara cheap. I like it. I think it's cool. Natalie with the battery of Kung Fu Mastery.
Natalie with the battery of Kung Fu Mastery.
The fair and fragrant maiden Chloe.
The fair and fragrant maiden Chloe.
Fair and fragrant.
The fair and fragrant. Didn't I say that?
You said
Yes.
fair fragrant. Did
No,
you?
He said fair and fragrant.
All right. Six pack Zach with a mean attack.
Six pack Zach with the mean attack.
And I've got a couple new patrons,
What?
guys. Yeah, two of them. So we've got Anthony. Welcome, Anthony.
Anthony.
Anthony, we love you. You, Anthony, have specified that you are, in fact, from Wisconsin. I don't know whether you're a friend of Jay and Katie's, maybe. I don't know how big Wisconsin is. But
It's not that big.
Geography, not,
And they all
not
kind
one
of
of
live
Nathan's
together
shows.
because
Nope.
the cold is everywhere else.
You have to huddle together.
They have to huddle together. But you know what he specified?
What?
and this is the weirdest thing I think I've ever heard about a human being.
Uh-huh.
He does not like cheese.
Oh.
He wanted it known that Anthony is from Wisconsin, like Jay and Katie, and so he's presumably cold, but he does not like cheese.
So Anthony, who is cold but does not like cheese.
Anthony, I think I'm going to call him, because I don't understand how someone can not like cheese. That's like saying I hate breathing, or I hate babies, or I hate flowers, or
put all those on the same level as cheese.
Cheese. Yeah, it's just like I hate my skin, you know? Cheese is one of the
life, happiness.
So why don't we say Anthony, who is cold and hates life, happiness, and cheese?
Anthony, who is cold.
Anthony is cold and hates life, liberty, and the pursuit of cheese.
I love it. Anthony, who's cold and hates
life, liberty, and the pursuit of... Thank you for giving, Anthony.
And hates life, liberty, and the pursuit of cheese. And then we've got our other new donor. Say hello to Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
Hey, Jeffrey, we love you. Now, let's think about the kind of categories of things that Jeffrey might be here for a second. We've done a lot of fantasy kind of names, so I want to stay away from wizards. And what's another cool category of person that Jeffrey probably resembles?
Superheroes.
Chuck Norris. So he could be...
Ninjas.
Oh, ninjas, yeah. Nunchuck
Texas Rangers.
Nunchuck Ninja Jeffrey, the Texas Ranger.
Yeah, there we go.
Can we get like some ninja related thing, like Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey? Or
Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey. I love it. Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey.
The Texas Ranger.
Yes. I love it.
Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey, the Texas Ranger.
All right, let's welcome Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey, the Texas Ranger.
Nice.
Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey.
The eyes of the Jeffrey are upon you.
That's right. And guys, having gotten through donor shout-outs, let us now enter into the Lamppost rankings. Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe. Quick recap here, very quick. Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe. Jake gave it 6. Nathan gave it 5. Brendan gave it 6 for a final booking ranking of 5.6 repeating. Prince Caspian, Nathan gave it 5.5. Brandon gave it 5. Jake gave it 5 for a final booking ranking of 5.16 repeating. VOTDT, Nathan 6. Brandon gave it 5 initially, but then he switched it to 6. Decided that Lamb didn't offend him so much.
Because I am
fickle
and changing.
Fickle Brandon, we call you. And Jake gave it 6. Final ranking 6. So that is actually the highest ranking one that I've read so far, but it was immediately superseded by the Silver Chair, which Nathan gave 7, Brandon gave 6.5, and Jake gave 5.5 for a final booking ranking of 6.25. The Horse and His Boy did not fare as well, I'm afraid, but it still wasn't terrible. Nathan gave it 5, Brandon gave it 4. Old grumpy face Brandon.
That's what they call me.
They call you a lot
grumpy
of
face.
Fickle grumpy face.
Who is also changeable and therefore repetitive.
Yeah. Fickle repetitive grumpy face Brandon. That'd be your donor name. And Jake gave it 5.
I see now. I get it.
No, we love you, Brandon. Jake gave it 5 for a final booking ranking, the lowest of the rankings, I'm afraid, at 4.6 repeating.
The book deserves those 666s.
Well, Brandon, you said it. I didn't. Magician's Nephew. Which one of you wants to go first, and what does he want to give it?
You know what, Nathan?
Yes, Brandon. No, I don't. You're going to have to tell me.
The Silver Chair was good, but the Magician's Nephew was better. 7 lampposts.
7 lampposts.
Are you kidding me?
So you're saying this is a flawless
Narnia book? 6 3/4 lamppost.
6 is fine.
I'm going to tear one of those little limbs off of it.
6.75.
Plant it in the ground, see what happens.
6.75 lamppost. Still, that
with one of the arms of the 6th lamppost planted beside it in honor of its almost perfection. But that's a reminder that last part is weird.
Planted beside it. Okay. Sounds good. So Brendan gave it 6.75 lampposts with one arm of another lamppost planted beside it. Jake, how many lampposts do you want to give this one?
I awarded a 6 to Dawn Treader and to Lion and Witch.
Correct.
5.5 to Caspian and to Silver Chair. And
Caspian, you just gave a straight 5. You have not dealt in any halves or percentages.
What did I give Silver Chair?
Silver Chair, you gave... Actually, yes, I'm sorry. You have dealt in a percentage. You did 5.5 for Silver Chair.
Yeah. I'm going to give Magician's Nephew a 5.75.
5.75. What's keeping
full point lower than me?
What's holding it back for you?
I'm not going to give anything a 7. Going to be my highest ranking, and
he's a hard grader.
This falls short of Don Treader and Lion Witch in the Wardrobe.
Would Charlotte's Web get a 7?
It wouldn't be on the lamppost system now, would it?
Would it get 7 spider webs?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, good. All right. I feel good about life with that. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and just give it, I think, a solid 6. I think this is a very good Narnia book. One of the best. It is not as good as The Silver Chair, which is definitely my favorite. The Silver Chair has an awesome third act. This one's third act gets a little wonky, but those first 2 acts are strong, man. I like those a lot.
I find this more fun to read than Silver Chair. So
yeah.
That's why I ranked it higher.
That's why I ranked it higher.
I would have ranked it the same, but then I had a moment of, wait, what would I be more interested to go back and read?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you'll be interested to know that the final Bookening ranking, given Nathan giving it a 6, Brandon giving it a 6.75 with one arm of a lamppost planted beside it, and Jake giving it a 5.75, is 6.16 repeating.
So still not the highest. What's the highest?
I think Silver Chair still has it beat. Let me double check.
That's fair.
Yeah, Silver Chair has a 6.25, so 6.25. So the Silver Chair, unless the last battle pulls
it won't.
Crazy
Silver
upset.
Chair is our winner.
Silver Chair is going to be our winner.
Congratulations, Silver Chair. You deserved it.
Brennan, the
fat lady has not yet sung.
The fat lady hasn't sung.
The orangutan
He's coming.
Has not yet put on a donkey suit or
maybe I am.
The dwarfs haven't sat in a shed.
Yeah. As far as you guys know, I may be converted to universalism next week.
Brennan, if you do that, then you can give like 9 lampposts to, you won't believe in truth anyway, so you can just give like 20 lampposts and totally throw off our system. It is unlikely that the last battle will pull an upset, but you never know. Maybe it'll pull an upset.
You never know.
I'm pretty sure it won't.
I kind of know.
I don't remember hating the last battle nearly as much as you guys say it.
So right now it's Silver Chair, then...
that's interesting. Right now it would be Silver Chair, followed by Magician's Nephew, followed by Don Treader, followed by
Lion
the Witch, followed by Caspian, followed by Boy. I think that's Jake might quibble about the Silver Chair, but being so high, but otherwise I think we could probably all agree that's a decently accurate.
Well, actually my only quibble is the fact that as a kid, I kind of hated the Magician's Nephew, and these are our rankings for them now, and I don't know that they are, well, I just know that they're not any reflection of what any normal kid would say. With the same thing with The Horse and His Boy. Any normal kid reading these is going to have a very different ranking.
I'd agree with that, except for that.
Okay with that.
I feel like I agree with that sentiment, but I feel like most of the kids I knew, including myself, really liked The Magician's Nephew. I think you might have been a slightly odd.
Actually, you're the only person that I've ever talked to that's...
Oh, really? Do your kids not like Magician's Nephew?
Well, I don't know what they've read or not read. I've only ever read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to them.
I haven't talked to any modern kids, but I seem to remember when I was a kid.
The people that I talk to, when they talk about books they liked as a kid, nobody ever brings up The Magician's Nephew. It's like the forgotten book that nobody really seems to care about.
I mean,
people talk about The Silver Chair. People talk about The Horse and His Boy.
So we're just
I know I'm the odd one with the Don Treader. Not a lot of people
love that one as much
as a kid as much as I did. I'm aware of that. But The Magician's Nephew has only ever come up as a top ranked book, from this series from our childhood. To my mind, the only person I've ever heard say that's you.
Interesting.
So maybe our listeners have had different experiences as kids.
Pretty sure
I'd be interested
and want
to
to correct me.
You said
You've
what?
said that?
Didn't I say I thought The Magician's Nephew would be high up there for me because I liked it?
You said it would be one of your favorites,
but I didn't read it as a child either, so
right.
I can't say that.
I would have said anecdotally in my mind that Magician's Nephew and Horse and His Boy were everybody's favorites.
Because I can't enter this conversation. I didn't read these as a child.
Right. But in any case, I don't know. Listeners, weigh in. This would be a good thing for you to weigh in on. What did you guys...
Anecdotally, I have thought that my love for the Dawn Treader and your love for the Magician's Nephew are both anomalies.
Both anomalies. Well, maybe that's true. I never thought that was the case, but I'd be interested to hear what people think on that one. So
we're just a bunch of weirdos.
Yeah. Hit us up on Twitter or the Sanityville forum or wherever you want to talk to us. Send us an email and tell us what your experience is. I'd be interested to hear that from people. Bookening Today was written by us all, produced by me, executive produced by Jake and me. Go to patreon.com/thebookening. You heard what good things will happen if you do. Other good things that will happen, we'll be able to make payroll. Warhorn Media will continue producing fine podcasts, among them The Bookening. Jake's children will eat food. My wife will eat food. Jake's wife might even eat some food paid for with some of the money that you give to Patreon. Go there today, patreon.com/thebookening. Sign up for as little as a cup a month. That's like the third time in a row I've done that.
A cup of coffee?
A cup of coffee a month. It's $5, $10, whatever you can give. We know there are some lurkers out there that really want to give, but just haven't gotten around to it. Now would be a good time to...
Lurker's gonna lurk.
Help us out.
Lurkers are going to become friends.
Come out of the shadows.
Actually, if you want to give us a little boost in the arm, which we could use right now, and get some cool stuff, you can go to warhornmedia.com/give, make a one-time donation of any amount to Warhorn Media. And what'll you get, Jake, for the month of October?
For the entire month of October, right up to the very end, we are giving all one-time givers in the month of October. Have I said the month of October yet? Have I mentioned that it's in the month of October?
What month do you think it's in, Brandon?
November?
Are you dumb?
Perhaps. It's very possible, Nathan. It is late.
So,
are you deaf?
So, if you give any one-time gift in any amount, doesn't matter how small or how big, in the month of October, we're giving you 2 free gifts. The first of those gifts is Tim Bailey's latest book, Church Reformed, in every possible downloadable variation.
Got your EPUB, your
EPUB, Mobi, PDF, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
We're giving it all to you. The other thing we're giving you is the latest album from My Soul Among Lions. My Soul Among Lions, a collective of musicians, singers, songwriters, including the 3 of us in this room as lyricists, working to set all 150 psalms to music. This latest album that's out sets Psalms 21 through 30 to music. It's volume 3 in the project. It's called Song of the King. It's got some really great songs on it.
It does indeed.
And songs that at least Nathan and I have contributed to.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But
yes.
but Brandon's been there since the very beginning of the project as well. And My Soul Among Lions is awesome. Check it out. And definitely make a donation at warhornmedia.com/give. Could really use your help this month.
Do it.